Happy summer! Welcome to A Little Bit of Monica. Today I am getting ready to go on my beach vacation and I have some books to get ready. So just to give a quick intro, I'm going to be vlogging a little bit on this trip, but it is a family vacation, so I won't really be able to talk about the books too much, but I just wanted to show you what books I'm taking along, and then at the end of the trip I'll check in and see which ones I actually got to read during the week. So I am going to Myrtle Beach with my in-laws, and I'm really excited. I love going there every year. It's so relaxing. I get some good time to sleep, to read, to do whatever the heck I want on the beach. I'm not a huge water person, so I typically am sitting in a chair most of the time, but I will put my feet in every once in a while. So I'm excited to get a week away from work, from everything, and just have a good time. But I do have some books that I'm going to be taking along with me, and so I'll just show you those really quick. I don't know how many of these I'll even get to. I always end up overpacking books, so we'll see. The first book is Into the Drowning Deep by Mira Grant. This one, my sister actually just lent me a couple days ago, and she said, oh, it's the perfect book to take and read on the beach because it's about drowning or water, and my sister knows that I am not huge on water, so I can't tell if this would be a good or bad decision, or just ironically brilliant. I don't know. This one is, from what I understand, it's about a ship that goes missing when it's going to film a mockumentary, and then they send a crew out to find out what happened to them, and I think it looks like one of the people on the rescue team is the sister to one of the people that went missing, so they're going to try to figure out what happened to them, and I think this sounds like it'd be super interesting. I think it would be safe because it's ship or like out in the middle of the ocean themed rather than beachside, so I think I would be safe to read this without, you know, hating my life on the beach. So I'm excited to hopefully get to this. Even if I don't read it on the beach, I am going to be reading it soon because I need to get through the books that people are lending me so that I don't hold them hostage for like years at a time. Sorry to my other sister, I've had her books for like 4 years. So I am going to try to get to this one in the near future, even if I don't get to it on the beach, because it is a thick one as well. So this would probably take me a while on the beach. The next book I'm bringing along is very fitting, People We Meet on Vacation, Emily Henry. Actually, I haven't read any Emily Henry yet, so this will be my first one. I heard this one was very popular, so I'm gonna give it a shot. I've had it on my shelf for a long time. Basically, this one is about two longtime best friends who used to go on summer vacation together every year, and then I guess they had a falling out and they didn't speak, and then all of a sudden they decide to go on another trip together and see if they can work things out, and obviously I have full faith that they will and more. So I'm excited for this one. We'll see if I get to it. It's very fitting for a vacation, and I just feel like this would be a great one to read beachside. The other two books that I am bringing for a specific reason, and I hope that I get to both of them, but we'll see what happens. They are Lock Every Door by Riley Sager and One by One by Ruth Ware. These two I need to read for an author signing that I have coming up after the beach trip, and so I really want to get through these two so that I have read them before I meet the authors. Lock Every Door was suggested to me to start with for Riley Sager, so I'm going to take this one along, and I'm really excited. It sounds interesting. I think it's someone goes to be an apartment sitter, and then they realize that the building is really creepy and weird, and I think someone goes missing, and then they have to figure out what happened. Sounds super intriguing, right up my alley of creepy, thrillery things. So I'm excited for this, also because I heard so many good things about Riley Sager, and I'm going to be meeting him in like a week and a half, so I should probably have read one of the books. And the other one is One by One by Ruth Ware. Again, haven't read any Ruth Ware yet, but this one was suggested to me, but it is super not beachy, so I'm not sure I want to read it on the beach. It definitely takes place in like snow, which is not super beachy. But it sounds like it's a group of people that get stranded in a cabin or something, and then they start disappearing or dying one by one, and mystery to figure out what's going on before they're all dead, I guess. Again, super interesting and right up my alley, and things I want to read. I don't know if I will read this on the beach, so this might wait until after I get back from vacation, and I'll have like 3 days to finish this before the author signing, but I'm gonna take it along just in case I feel inspired, because you never know. So I might read this one at the beach. I also might wait because it is snowy and not beachy, but I'm gonna take it anyway. So those are the 4 books that I'm taking. I also need to give a quick shout out to my vacationer from Escape the Readathon. I am taking my vacationer's bookmark along with me on my vacation, and I'm gonna have a great time. I'm really excited, and when I get back, I will let you know which books I actually managed to read and which ones I had to put aside. So I will see you in a week. So we just got back from our beach vacation last night. We got in at like 9 p.m. So it was a very long day because we did drive down. I don't know if I mentioned that at the beginning. We drove, it was about a 9-hour drive down, and then it ended up being a bit longer than that on the way back, but we also hit some rain and flooding in some areas, and it was super fun, super great. But all around, it was an awesome vacation. I feel very rested. I did get a little sunburned on the first day because we got there at like 10 o'clock in the morning, and we went down to the beach for a couple of hours, and because we were only on the beach for like 2 or 3 hours, we didn't put sunscreen on, which is obviously our own fault, and I fell asleep after the long drive. I fell asleep under the umbrella, but my shoulder was exposed to the sun at one point, and I had a really bad burn on my shoulder for the first like 3 days of the trip, which was super fun and painful. But it was honestly such a fun trip. The first day I mentioned that we managed to have a couple of hours on the beach, and then once we got cleaned up and showered, we went out for dinner because I met up with Lexi from Books with Lexi and Michelle from Michelle's Library. The Pyramid Book Club finally got together for one night, and it was so much fun, and I wish that it could happen more often. I wish we lived closer to each other. But we got dinner together, we talked all things books, all things life, and just had a solid couple of hours together to hang out and have a good time. The rest of the week looked pretty much the same every day for me. We would typically wake up, eat breakfast, get ready for beach time. We would carry all of our stuff down to the beach because we have huge umbrellas and chairs and bags and everything. We'd get set up on the beach, we'd be there all day, and we'd come back in the evening, get showered and ready for dinner, whatever the dinner plan was that night. We typically would go out to eat because we just love finding those places that are staples of Myrtle Beach. So that was the typical plan. We did have a couple of days where it rained, so the plan was changed a little bit. There was one day where I was out in the rain because we were huddled under the umbrellas. It just hit all of a sudden and was downpouring. And I love rain. I don't love ocean. I don't love deep water, but I love rain. And so I was happily just out in the rain and had a great time. But it does throw a wrench into things because then everything is wet and you have to just hope that the sun's going to come out and dry everything before you go back inside, which thankfully it did. And we still had some really, really great days on the beach. But I will also say that the rain made it a little harder to read because I'm not going to have my physical books out with me on the beach getting wet. So during the rain patches, I did have to put my book away. But despite all of that, I still got a lot of really great reading time. It is a family vacation, and so I'm there with other people. And so I'm not reading all the time because we're trying to talk, we're catching up. My in-laws live a couple of hours away from us, so when we get together, we want to be paying attention. So everybody was reading at times, and that was really great. But there were other times where everybody wanted to talk, and so I did put the book away. So as a wrap up for my reading for the week, I did only get through 2 of the 4 books that I took with me, but again, that's okay because we had some really nice conversation and just visiting with family that we don't get to see all the time. The first book I finished for this trip was Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. This one, I think I want to give it 4 stars. I know this one came out in 2019, so this one came out first, but it was giving me very big The Paris Apartment vibes because I read Paris Apartment first, even though this one came out first. So I understand that this one came first, but they just felt very similar to me in the someone moves into an unfamiliar place and they're trying to solve a mystery of what's happening, and the place is really creepy. Everybody there is really creepy. My cat is jumping around on everything right now, so you'll probably hear his bell continuously. But anyway, this one is about an apartment sitter that moves into a really well-known building, but it's well known for all the bad things that happen there. And she quickly realizes that things really are not the way she had expected them to be. Things are, in fact, very weird and creepy, and someone goes missing, and then she feels the urge to figure out what's going on because she's connecting dots, that things just aren't adding up here. And slowly she unravels the truth of what's happening, which was just weird. It went in a couple directions that I didn't expect it to. There were a lot of things that I saw coming, which I think is good, because I do feel like when you're reading a mystery or a thriller and the ending comes out of absolutely nowhere, it's like, how was anyone ever supposed to figure out? Like, it just doesn't add up enough. Like, it doesn't make sense. So you do want things to feel like they can unfold as they go. I do feel like this one was really good with that, where there were pieces along the way that I was picking up and I'm like, ooh, I think that's what's going to happen, and it did. And so that felt really good, but there were also parts that I did not see coming towards the end. So I really did enjoy it. I feel like if I had read this before The Paris Apartment, I probably would have loved it even more. But because I did read The Paris Apartment, and for some reason they just felt very similar in my head. But again, this one was really cool. I really enjoyed the intricacies of the characters and the way that they all interacted in different ways. I think the complicated personalities that were involved in the story were really interesting. The entire thing with the missing people, and the main character, her background is that her sister had gone missing when she was younger. And so when this other person in her life at this apartment building goes missing, she feels this like intrinsic need to figure out what's going on so that the same thing doesn't happen to her that happened to her sister. I really like that element. I think it adds a lot of depth to the main character, as well as it gives you a more personal attachment to this second character that's not the sister, that is just the other person in the apartment that goes missing. It just gives you this bigger connection to her because you kind of also want her to be safe, and you want Jules, the main character, to be able to like make progress and figure out what happened. And eventually she does figure out what happened, and it is a big ol' explosion of chaos, and I absolutely loved it. Overall, I really liked this book. It kept me engaged. I wanted to keep reading. I kept picking it up. I did, in fact, get some sunscreen grease and oil on the hardback cover, so I'm glad that it has the dust jacket on it now, because I don't have to look at the like greasy, oily marks from my sunscreen that I absolutely hate, but is just gonna happen when you take books to the beach. And the second book that I got through on the trip was People We Meet on Vacation. I wanted a nice change from the dark, thrillery, mystery vibe of Lock Every Door, so I went with a romantic comedy, whatever you want to call this. This one I did give 3.5 to 4 stars. I really liked reading it. I read it really quickly. I think I got through it in like the last 2.5 days of the trip, which is pretty good for me. I had no issues with getting through it. I really did enjoy the story itself. I think the premise, the trope, all of it was very good. I think it was well written and it was engaging, but there were a couple things that I didn't super love about it, and so I did knock it down just a little bit. First of all, I think this book could have been quite a bit shorter. For anyone who hasn't read this book yet, the story centers around Poppy and Alex, who became best friends in college and went on summer trips together every year for like 12 years or something. And even though their personalities were super different, they just got along really well, like a soulmate level. And they went on these trips every single year until they had a falling out. Then they didn't talk for 2 years, and then all of a sudden she hits him up out of nowhere. He's like, hey, let's take another trip. And they do, and you can tell obviously things are going to be a little bit weird, but then obviously by the end they're going to end up realizing that they were in love with each other all along. Very predictable kind of timeline. And I did like that we had 2 timelines in this story. So one timeline is the present timeline, where they're going on this trip 2 years after they stopped talking to each other, and you're kind of getting the full story of how that whole trip is going and how it's unraveling with all the past drama. And then in between, you're alternating with flashbacks to each of their previous trips that they took, starting with the very first time they met and when they just started going on their trips. And I think that was really cool. I really liked that element. But what I didn't love is how many chapters and how many trips we had to read about. I feel like I got the idea after the 3rd trip that they went on, but we ended up getting flashbacks from like 10 years of trips. And I just, by the end, I was like, I don't need to read about years 4, 5, and 6 because they're just the same as all the rest. They're behaving the same way. They're talking to each other the same way. They're doing a lot of the same types of things on these trips. At one point, the one chapter was like 2 pages long. I was like, did we need this? And again, some of it was good. I did enjoy some of those trips and some of the things that they were talking about doing, but I do feel like I did not need to read 10 years of trips when you could have just been like, yeah, for 3 years we did these trips and they were really fun, and then this year happened and everything fell apart, and then tell me the story of that. But I did not need every single year detailed in its own chapter. And so I felt by the end, I was like, okay, I just want the main story. Like, I'm tired of these flashbacks because I already got an idea of what's going on. I just want the main story and how that's going to unfold. And then by the end, they're going to Alex's brother's wedding. So you kind of have to hope along the way. Like, I hope that this wedding is not horribly awkward because they are awkward with each other during it, but obviously everything ends up turning out fine, and I really loved the ending. I liked how everything unfolded. I really liked the central timeline of their 2 years later after their fight and how they're trying so hard to make everything not uncomfortable and to get back to where they were before without just ignoring what had happened between them, which, by the way, you don't even really know what happened between them until like near the end, because we're working backwards in those flashbacks. So you start with the time they met and then you keep going progressively like closer to the current timeline. And so by the time you get to the 2 years earlier, which is when they had their falling out, at that point I was already like, okay, I am ready to move on. I think I would have given this book probably 5 stars if I hadn't had to read so many of those trip chapters. I heard authors talking once about like, how do you know when to create chapters or when to cut things out of your story? And essentially the one person, I can't even remember who it was or when this was, but they had said like, when you're reading a chapter that you wrote, if you are not getting any new information from it, if you're not learning something about the character, moving forward in the timeline, or the reader is not being able to understand something new, then it doesn't need to be there. And I actually had that exact thought at one point during this book where I was reading a chapter of one of those trips, and I thought to myself, I did not learn a single new thing about these characters. It's just an additional background piece that I didn't need because I already understand who Poppy is and what she does and why she does it. And I already understand Alex and who he is and what he does and why he does it. And I just didn't learn anything new from those chapters, nor did it build anything up for the next chapters for me. So that was kind of my foundation of why I ended up really disliking how many chapters we got on these past trips, because it was just, yeah, it was a new event, but it didn't give me anything that actually moves the story forward anymore. It's just extra background for, in my opinion, no reason. But again, other than that, I really did like the book. I think the best friends to lovers trope is one of my favorites, probably. And so I really loved this, and I loved the way everything did unfold. I just feel like it took a little too long to get there. And then, so I did say that there were 2 others that I took with me, One by One by Ruth Ware and Into the Drowning Deep by Mira Grant. And both of these I did not get to. One by One, like I said at the beginning, I purposefully ended up not reading One by One because it was not beachy. It was very wintry, and I didn't want to read that at the beach. So I will hopefully be reading that in the next couple of days before I go to the author signing, because I would like to have read that book before going. And then Into the Drowning Deep, even though it was water related, I did not read that one either. It was really thick, and I just had a feeling with the pace that I was going on, I didn't think I'd be able to finish it by the end of the trip. And I was able to finish both of the other 2 books like perfectly. I finished People We Meet on Vacation at like 4 o'clock on the last day on the beach, so that worked out really perfectly for me. It would have been very ironic timing if I had read Into the Drowning Deep, because of the nature of the plot, which is a ship that has gone missing, and they send another group of people to go look for it. So given current events with the Titanic situation, I'm kind of glad I didn't read it. I also kind of wish I had read this book, because that would have just been a very, like, weirdly ironic timing, but I did not read it, and I think for my own sanity, it's probably a good thing that I didn't, because being at the beach and reading about water troubles as a person who prefers not to go swimming is probably in my best interest. So that is a quick wrap up of my time at the beach for a week. I just love vacations. And being able to get away from regular life for a little bit, being able to relax and soak up some sun, which is so healthy, to just like be outside and be with people, be in the sun. And it was great because you can be with people but still be reading and still be quiet or take a nap, and it just is so wonderful. So I had a really great time, and again, I'm so glad that I got to meet Michelle for the first time. I already have known Lexi for years and years, but meeting Michelle for the first time was so special, and I'm just so thankful that we were all in the same place at the same time. It just seemed like the stars aligned for us, and it was so great. So that was so much fun, and just in general, had a great week, got some good reading in, and I feel inspired to keep reading, which is always good, because there have been times where I come back from vacation and I've read so much or so little that I just lose my motivation, and I don't feel that way at all. I feel ready to dive into my next book, which will probably be one by one, so that I can get that read in the next couple of days. But let me know in the comments if you have read any of these books and what you thought of them, especially Lock Every Door, People We Meet on Vacation. Let me know if I'm alone on some of these thoughts, or if other people felt the same way. Maybe I am the only person who thought that People We Meet on Vacation was longer than it should have been, because it's not even that long of a book, but it still felt kind of long. So let me know your thoughts in the comments if you've read either of those two. And then if you read One by One or Into the Drowning Deep, let me know that as well. Let me know what you think. Give me some inspiration to get into those as well. Don't forget to subscribe so that you can keep up with all of my future videos. And also make sure that you are subscribed to Lexi and Michelle, who are tagged in the description below, because they are awesome. And also the Pyramid Book Club is awesome. And if you haven't tuned in to any of our book club discussions and reading sprints yet, make sure you do that. And assuming I get this video out soon enough, we do have our June reading sprints and live discussion coming up at the end of the month. So make sure you tune into that. We are reading The Scourge Between Stars by Ness Brown, and it's a pretty short one, so it hopefully will not take too long to get through. So make sure you tune in for that, and also follow along on Instagram. We do have a Pyramid Book Club Instagram account, as well as all three of us individually have our own Instagrams. So make sure that you are following, liking, subscribing, keeping up with everything, because you don't want to miss out on some of the awesome content we have coming up. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!